Welcome everybody, and welcome to this first episode in the webinar series that we're currently running around Cloud ERP. We hope you find the sessions informative. We will be sharing the link to a recorded version at the end, so that if people have missed it or you want to share this session with colleagues or you want to repeat or rerun some of the session, you will have a link to be able to go and watch a recording. We always welcome input, and these are meant to be informative sessions that bring value and understanding to an ever maturing cloud marketplace. So if you have comments or anything, please feel free to contact us shortly afterwards. As I mentioned, this is part number 1 in a series of 5. So after today's session, there'll be another session around 3 steps to developing your cloud strategy. Then we're going to run a session on coexistence of on-prem and cloud in a hybrid type situation, and then we're going to run a session on understanding your finance reporting options in the cloud, and finally we'll talk about what life looks like after go live. So what does BAU, what does business as usual look like? Again, the agenda is designed to give you a sense, a flavour of a number of key areas that we've seen in the marketplace to help you prepare for cloud if that's a journey you're looking at currently. By way of quick introductions, my name is Phil Wilson. I'm one of the VPs in Inoapps. Been in the implementation world for 25 plus years. Have been working in cloud ERP apps for over 6 years now. And joining me today, I'd like to introduce you to Vicky Briggs. Vicky's our Global Head of Enterprise. Vicky, do you want to just say a quick hello and an introduction?
Hello, and thank you for joining us. So my name's Vicky Briggs. I head up Inoapps' Enterprise Change Division with a focus on helping our customers to achieve the strategic and business case outcomes that the initiatives they're embarking on in the cloud are designed to deliver, and also to help them to understand the business change journey that will underpin your success.
Thanks, Vicky. So for those of you that are logged on a tablet, you'll find a toolbar probably at the top or right hand side of your mobile tablet device. This will allow you to any time to raise your hand if you have questions or you've got issues with connectivity, etc. If you're on a PC, you'll get a menu similar to the one that's shown on the right hand side. Interaction's always welcome, so if you've got questions, we'll tend to come to those at the end and cover off what we can. If we can't cover them off on the session, we'll get answers for you and include them in the recording. And obviously if you're having technical difficulties, one of my colleagues will flag that to me, and we'll try and sort out those technical difficulties. But it looks like there's quite a large number of people on at the moment, so hopefully you've all got on fine by the looks of it. So the agenda for session 1 today, firstly we're going to talk about, is cloud right for my organisation? As I've said, we've been in the marketplace around on-premise for a large number of years, and more latterly in the last 5 or 6 around cloud, and we understand some of the dynamics of cloud, what drives it, what makes people want to move to it, and we'll talk about some of those, and then we'll talk about building the business case or the return on investment around cloud. We'll talk about consideration points when you're looking at cloud, different options to get there, and then finally, and a session that Vicky will focus on is around process and culture. Cloud does change the world in terms of the way you need to think about it and the way you need to deploy it, and we've got some learning experience to share with you. So as I said, hopefully an informative agenda and one that you'll find useful. If there are any other points people want to cover at any point after this, again, please just drop us an email at info@inoapps.com, etc. So quickly, trends in the marketplace. So in terms of what we're seeing, we're typically seeing now implementations in cloud for same product set that used to be deployed on premise to be much more rapid. So now taking between 4 to 6 months to go from nothing to a live system. We're seeing, and this is the evolution of cloud, we're seeing much more adoption of standard processes. So cloud allows you to configure the software in a vast number of ways, but you can't customize it as easily as you used to be able to. So it is putting some brakes on that, which is a good thing, because this is what allows you to take the regular updates of software. We've seen companies take the opportunity to drive reporting to the end user, so deliver intelligence to the end user's desktop and the tools to help them take that further and ratify it and enhance it even more. And also we're seeing companies looking at reducing complexity by moving to cloud. So take away some of the extensions, some of the complex customizations that were put in place that were allowed when you were in an on-prem world. And we'll hopefully touch on some of these points today and over the next series of sessions. So first point to cover is cloud right for my organization. Many people are aware of cloud, some people have already made that leap to the cloud, some people have been looking at cloud and looking at the pros and cons. What I would say is I think there's been some nervousness and some concern about, is it mature, is it developed? Obviously from an Oracle perspective, we now have a fully mature cloud solution that covers all pillars, whether it be finance, whether it be HCM, whether it be projects, whether it be procurement, whether it be supply chain, whether it be talent or talent management or talent acquisition, and also around the sales, marketing and service, the CRM type side of things. Also through acquisition, obviously Oracle's bought in other products, and the Hyperion acquisition obviously bought in a lot of on-premise products, and again they have been transitioned to the cloud, so you can now get multi-pillar solutions that are cloud-based as an alternative to the on-prem solutions. There's a number of choices in terms of deployment. So you can obviously have on-premise or private cloud. You can have a hybrid where you've got some stuff on-premise and some data on-premise and some in the cloud. Or you can go to public cloud, which is the way that most people are now going, which is where your data sits in the cloud, securityed away from everybody else's data, and is the most seen option in the marketplace at the moment. So the market's mature, the products are mature, people are making that transition. There's now a number of customers that have made that jump to the cloud. The next thing we see in companies is that people need to build out the business case and understand what the return on the investment is. And again, one of the drivers for moving to cloud is to take out the complexities, to take out the cost of ownership of having an on-premise solution, and look at taking full advantage of the benefits of a deployed solution in cloud. What does that mean? As well as reducing OpEx costs, which is obviously the cost of owning that infrastructure, you can also make sure you're bringing agility and efficiency to your company, whether you're in a growth stage or a steady business state. What does that mean? We see a lot of companies that have taken an on-premise solution and actually can't go through an upgrade process, can't take advantage of the next generation of software products. So moving to cloud gives you that agility, gives you the ability through the controlled amount of configuration and extension you can do that will mean that you can leverage later releases, and at the moment we're getting 2 functional releases per year with enhanced functionality, additional functionality, and obviously improvements in the software overall. Also, the whole of the software stack in cloud has been re-engineered so that the whole user interface has been brought up to a millennials expectation in terms of the look and feel, the way it works. More and more we're seeing people want, part of recruiting people is they want to be able to have internal systems that help people get on and are comfortable for people to get on that come into the business and have expectations around what facilities they're going to have to work with. Total cost of ownership, again, we'll talk a bit about the business case in a bit more detail, but actually reduce the total cost of ownership overall. So in a cloud world, you pay a subscription, so you don't necessarily have all the upfront costs. Again, this can be of benefit. It can mean that you can actually now start to look at putting some of the costs on OpEx rather than CapEx. It also means you haven't got the infrastructure, so you don't have to buy the infrastructure up front, where you used to have at least some form of infrastructure to install the software on when it was on premise. And obviously, the technology moves on. So again, because you can be on the latest release all the time, you can leverage that technology to be more efficient and focused on what you do as a business, and not necessarily spend a fortune on non-core business activities around IT. So drilling down a bit more on some of these, bring agility, efficiency, absolutely, as I said, use the fact that customizations are now technically impossible in cloud to return to standard processes. Get out of the trap situation where if you've done a customization, you can't go through an upgrade process, or if you want to do an upgrade, it's a massive cost. So it tends to spiral in terms of cost to keep going through those versions. Agility, new generation of tools, always updated, lots of embedded BI, lots of mobile, lots of built-in technology foundations, and take the latest releases. And these are all drivers to think about the value you can get out of moving to the cloud. Reduce OpEx costs. As I said, license costs go out. You now have a subscription license, and a lot of the support costs that you used to have internally or from a third party for keeping the infrastructure, keeping the lights on, disappear, because it's all the responsibility of Oracle. Some of the benefits we've seen, obviously eliminate the need for expensive customizations, automatic upgrades. I think people are initially cautious about this, but actually once we explain the way that the upgrades work, people really like the idea that they're going to have future functionality available at their fingertips on a regular basis. Make more informed data driven business decisions, so empower the user to be delivered information that's valid and can help them to understand how to take a decision based upon business data in a more effective way. Consistent processes. Take the opportunity to look at what you do today and bring your company back to standard processes that are consistent with the application. They're just a few examples. So some consideration points as part of your business case. You've got all these efficiencies, and we can provide stats about what these efficiencies drive in terms of benefits. You obviously can have a financial benefit from going to a subscription rather than a license-based transaction, and with all the associated hardware costs. But other things to consider when you're looking at your business case and return on investment are things like re-implement or reuse. So depending on when you implemented and how much the business has changed, you might be able to reuse some of the configuration decisions that you took in the past. Indeed, if you're a e-business suite user, we could well take the opportunity, because the data structures are so similar, to reuse some of the config that you have in e-business suite in cloud and automate that process to the main degree. Or you re-implement it. If your business has changed, if you've realized that some of the decisions you took when you first implemented are wrong, then you've got the opportunity now to re-implement or reuse where it's appropriate and make modifications to the bits that are no longer appropriate. You need to think about technical integration. You will still have niche systems that are required. Again, there's certain tools and technologies to use. We've obviously had quite a lot of experience in this area, and one of the webinars we'll be running, not in this series but alongside it, is around technical integration, how to do it, the best options. One other point, what do I do in my data? We've had customers that basically wanted to take a massive amount of data through into the new system. We would advocate, and each customer is slightly different, that we take through what is sensible and allow you to access all the other legacy data, either in a data warehouse or leave it somewhere for accessibility. Again, a big topic, a big job if you're transforming your business and changing lots of configurations. So for example, if you're changing your chart of accounts. And again, we've got tools and technologies to help you look at that and understand what's the best way to go. The next question, after all this, once you understand the benefits, once you understand the efficiencies, once you understand the consideration points, is to think about, is your business ready to make that journey to the cloud? Where are you in that life cycle? We're going to cover this in more detail in the next webinar in terms of the next steps in assessing your ability to take on cloud services. But one of the things we typically would do is start to work with you guys or work with customers to do readiness assessments. So is my business ready? And part of a readiness assessment is to identify and check that the solution coverage gives you what you need, and also we'll start to talk to you about some of the benefits of platforms as a service to look at how you do integrations and extensions where there is no standard software coverage. And obviously we start to build out indicative return on investment stroke benefits business cases. Some of the ones we do are free of charge as part of pre-sales. Some of them where a customer really wants to go into a high level of detail, we have a proposition that produces you a very detailed report, and there's a fee for that. And again, we'll talk a bit about that readiness assessment in the future sessions, but we're seeing a lot of customers want to use our knowledge and expertise to start to look at these items. Other questions, other things that you should consider is what route should I take to the cloud, big bang or small bites. So we are now seeing customers take one part of their solution or one part of their business to cloud first as a small bite approach, and we're seeing other customers that are saying no, we'll move everybody to the cloud, take all the benefits as quickly as possible. And again, each customer is different, and we need to work with customers to understand what their level and approach to risk is, etc., to understand what's the best option for them. And part of that is looking at the benefits and actually doing that weighing between the weight balance between should we drive to get the most efficiency quickly, slightly more risk, or should we go low risk and just take a small part of the business or a small part of functionality to the cloud. There's also those customers that aren't quite ready to go the full hog or go the full big bang approach. So there are options. People, you can stay where you are for the time being. If you want to get away from the infrastructure residing within your data center and your responsibility or third-party responsibility at a cost, you can look at infrastructure as a service as a halfway house. So pick up what you've got in terms of instance, in terms of the software and the configuration of the data as it is today, and put it into a cloud infrastructure, which means that Oracle then take on the responsibility for keeping the lights on the box and performance, and you just have the same application that you've had on-prem available to you. As I mentioned, migrate to cloud for smaller entities as a proof point is one option we're seeing. So if you've got an acquisition as a smaller business, then use that as a pilot, and also look at a process area or process flow that you may be able to take to cloud and see that as less risky. And now we're going to talk a bit about process and culture, and the way that we see these deployments happening and why it's different than on-prem solutions. So I'm going to hand over to Vicky to take you through this session.
Thanks, Phil. Phil, can we flick to the next slide, please? Okay, so the great thing about Oracle Cloud is the standardized nature of the business flows. So by aligning your business organization to Oracle Cloud's modern business flows, you're actually taking away a lot of the legacy distractions that would have impacted your project team and their thought process, their time and their attention. So in the past there was a lot of focus on designing every single intricate functional, non-functional requirement, going through in detail, working out what a good business process would look like for your specific organization. And that meant that a lot of organizations spent a lot of time designing a solution that was just fit for purpose for them and didn't necessarily align to industry standard best practice. With the introduction of Oracle Cloud, Oracle's actually done a lot of research into what good practice looks like, particularly in the ERP, so the finance, purchase to pay, sales to cash space, and based on that market research and also a wide range of implementations that they've undertaken over the years with their customer base, have actually created pre-designed, pre-developed business flows for you to align your organization to. This is good because this encourages your organisation to focus on the change journey rather than the underpinning technology as a legacy distraction. So your business alignment journey then becomes a focus on the process changes, the policy implications of those process changes, and then also trying to understand how your people are affected. And by bringing to the party what your processes, which processes are affected by the modern business flows, understanding what your policies and your protocols are, so your risk factors, any legal requirements that you need to adhere to, what you're actually trying to achieve. You can then understand how this will affect your people, and therefore the messaging and the effort required to bring your organisation and your key stakeholders on that journey. Phil, could we flick to the next slide, please? So in order to support our customers on their transition and their business alignment to the Oracle Modern Business Flow, so to Oracle Cloud, we've actually developed an embedded and integrated business change journey that's wrapped around our core implementation methodology. And this has 4 key stages. So the first one being set the vision, the second being model the transition, the third being assure outcome quality, and then the final one being continuous improvement. In terms of setting the vision, this is effectively at the start of your transition to Oracle Cloud. Success will only be achieved if you understand what good looks like, and that means that during the initiation stage we spend time working with you, and we would encourage our customers to understand what the strategic vision is. So what is it that your organisation is trying to achieve? Why are you moving to Oracle Cloud? What does good look like for you? What are your business case objectives? And these should be clearly stated at the beginning of the implementation, and all key stakeholders, particularly the project team who are going to be involved in making business alignment, business design decisions, need to understand from the start what good looks like, what the end goal is, so that we can regularly refer to that throughout the implementation and make sure that we're staying on track, we're staying on message, and that actually when it comes to benefits realisation post-implementation, every decision made on the project, every decision made on the transition to the cloud has been based on what the business case set out at the start. The second stage, modelling the transition, so this is around understanding the solution design. So once we understand what your cloud journey scope will be, you'll have selected some business flows, so it may be around purchase to pay or sales to cash, but those business flows that we will be helping you to implement, or that you'll be implementing as an organisation, it's effectively at this stage understanding how introducing Oracle standard business flows, how that will affect your organisation. So what business process changes, either upstream or downstream, may be required. So understanding the business impact, completing a business impact assessment, and then also having a look at what that might mean for stakeholder engagement and user adoption. And we'll go into the stakeholder engagement and the business impact assessment in a little bit more detail later on. The next stage, which is around assuring quality outcomes, so this is effectively preparing your organisation. Once you've understood, okay, so we understand how we're going to align our business to the Oracle Cloud, we understand the business flows, we understand the design decisions that we've taken around approval levels, we understand who's going to be impacted, we're now ready to actually check that the solution meets our quality criteria, and that covers 2 key areas. One is effectively acceptance into service, so is it operationally ready to go live, and 2 is actually the user acceptance testing, so actually down to a sort of detailed, do all the flows work the way we anticipate, has the data been set up correctly, etc. And then the final piece, as I said earlier, is the continuous improvement. So the great thing about Oracle Cloud is that you are continuously on the latest release. So you know, whereas with legacy solutions, you may be in a situation where you're not actually taking on board upgrades, improvements, new functionality, new features, new processes. With Oracle Cloud, you get those on a regular basis, so you're always aligned to best practice, and that means that as each opportunity comes along for you to take on board a new upgrade in the cloud, you actually get a chance to say, is this right for us? How would we apply this to our business? What's the business impact? So continuously improving your processes. Phil, could you flick us to the next slide, please? Okay, so I mentioned earlier when we was talking about understanding, sort of modelling the transition and understanding how it will affect your business, we talked a little bit about a business impact assessment. So I'm just going to take a moment to talk you through what we've found has actually been quite useful in guiding our customers as they understand, okay, so we've signed up to Oracle Cloud, we are implementing modern business flows. Actually, how does that affect our business? What are the key questions that we need to ask so that we can understand what changes we need to put in place to our policies, what communications and messages that we need to send out to our stakeholders, and what training or knowledge transfer we need to put in place. So there are effectively 4 key stages to this. The first stage is fairly simple, which is, okay, which business flows are in scope, and which business flows are we going to do the impact assessment on. The second is to understand the changes, and you do this by asking key questions around which processes are impacted, so which policies are impacted, what outputs do we need from the solution, as in reports or data that will be transferred to other systems, payments that need to be made, referring back to the business case, what outcomes are we looking to achieve, what are the key risks or barriers to success. And then once you understand those key components, it's moving on to actually which stakeholders will be affected by this. Now there are a range of, as part of the business impact assessment, there are a range of key questions that help you to identify at an early stage the stakeholders that are going to be affected, and then at a later stage, and I've got a slide a little bit later that we can go through, we can start profiling those stakeholders and understanding how to engage with them to get them to actually maximise use of the system after it's in sort of operational use. So the sorts of questions we ask is, who are the stakeholders? What's their role? Why are they interested? How many stakeholders are there? How frequently will they be impacted? Any communications we need to send out to them? Who are going to be our champions? What knowledge gaps there are? And then the final step in the business impact assessment is to make sure we understand what the key messages are. So what will be, what are the advantages of adopting the modern business flow? Are there any opportunities for improvement? What's the rationale for any perceived disbenefits where we might want to communicate out to our stakeholders? A justification or rationalisation of any perceived sort of, actually this might, you might find some people are saying that this will change their role. Self-service often finds people a little bit nervous around, well, actually, will they have access to technology? So it can help you to sit down and work out, well, what are the barriers going to be? What provisions do you need to put in place to make this easy for your stakeholders to adopt? And then you can also work out the difference between messages around selling the solution and messages around telling stakeholders what they need to know to function once the system's live, as in where do they get training notes, how do they access the system, what are the policies, what are the procedures, why do they need to carry out the steps that they need to carry out, who do they call if they've got any questions or challenges, etc. Phil, could we flick to the next slide, please? So in this slide we talk a little bit, so we talked a little bit previously around the fact that once you understand the business flows that are going to be impacted, first step in order to understand what impact that may have on your wider organisation is the business impact assessment. The second step in that is stakeholder alignment. So once you've identified the stakeholders that will be affected, you effectively move into stakeholder categorisation. So by categorising your stakeholders into key groups, so for example, you may have a group of executives who really, they're not too hands-on with the system, but they need to have key performance indicator information out of the system, so they may need access to a dashboard. You may have budget holders who need to go in and approve expenditure. You may have purchase requisitioners who need to go into the system to request to order goods or to order services. Once you've categorised your stakeholders, you can then work out the key messages for each of those categories, how many individuals are in each of those categories, and that will then help you to profile the rest of the stakeholder and user adoption planning and the approach that you're going to take. So for example, for each stakeholder category, you can start to look at, well, what might the stakeholder perception be? Are they excited because it will mean that there's a better, from an exec stakeholder category group, they're going to have for the proof. So for them, this will be an exciting change, but you may find that there are some individuals in the organisation who are a little bit more apprehensive and they want to understand how it will affect their role, and actually will they have time to learn the new system, and actually they were quite happy with how things were currently, so why are we fixing it? So once you understand the stakeholder categories and perhaps the perception each stakeholder category may have of the proposed change, you can then start to think about how you profile the messaging, what extra steps you might need to put in place to make some of the stakeholder groups excited about the system, whereas you may have others that are they're going to be on board fairly easily, so you don't need to put too much effort into driving enthusiasm there. You can then take a look at stakeholder competency. So one of the key barriers to success is actually if your stakeholder groups don't understand what they need to do to make this, to interact successfully with the system. So by understanding stakeholder competency, looking at usage levels, current skill set, you can then work out what your engagement profile is, and then that can all feed into your training plans and knowledge transfer plans. And then the other component is stakeholder profiling in terms of stakeholder interest and influence. So we can go through that in more detail in later series, but effectively each stakeholder category will have a level of interest in the system, or in Oracle Cloud, in terms of how it affects their role, but they'll also have different levels of influence as to actually how they could make the implementation more successful or derail the implementation. And by understanding that at the early stages, you can profile the right messages and basically resource the right level of interaction with each stakeholder group. So all of that top line around stakeholder categorization, understanding perception, understanding core competencies, and profiling the stakeholders in terms of interest and influence, that will then all feed down into your stakeholder engagement plans, working out the right training and learning cycles, and then also getting ready for understanding the business readiness, as in how ready is your organisation to accept the changes that are coming into play. When you first start off your initiative, you'll find that awareness will be quite low, you'll probably have quite high resistance and low engagement, but towards the end and getting closer to go live, you want to be flipping that on its head and have sort of reduced levels of resistance, more excitement and engaged stakeholders. And you can measure that throughout the process with key questionnaires and interview techniques and using champions. And from that perspective, I think that brings us sort of to a close in terms of some key lessons learned that we've found and tools and techniques for bringing your stakeholders on the cultural journey with you. I think as a closing point, we were going to cover here actually how not to bring legacy thinking into the cloud and into your cloud implementation. A key thing to remember is that this is about bringing your organisation on the journey towards aligning to the modern business flows, as opposed to trying to design a solution that is bottom up, effectively 100% based on your organisation's specific detailed requirements. And what you're trying to do is actually avoid allowing stakeholders to derail that alignment to Oracle Cloud. So you need to be making sure that at the start of the initiative, you have a clear understanding of what we're trying to achieve, who will be impacted, what the key messages are, and how you bring people on the journey with you. Thank you. Phil, if I hand back to you now.
Thanks, Vicky. Very informative. We will also schedule a session just on this change journey. It's embedded now in the type of cloud deployments we do. You know, the software is not as customizable as it used to be. So change is a massively important part of any cloud journey. So we're getting towards the end. Just would be wrong of me not to mention a bit about our background. So we are an Oracle partner, obviously, been going for 11 years, 300 plus staff globally. We started to make the cloud journey ourselves back in 2013 when we implemented cloud and one of the first users of Cloud Live. Obviously we took that learning experience and it helped us understand what we need to do differently between an on-prem and the cloud project. We've done numerous implementations now of Cloud ERP, Cloud HCM, Cloud Project, Cloud Hyperion, Cloud Customer Service, and we've got a track record of being seen as a thought leader in the area. So as I mentioned earlier, the whole idea is to share the information, share our knowledge. We're predominantly based out of EMEA, but have global operations in ASEAN and also in the US. So, as always, we're always here to help, advise, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to contact us on either info@inoapps.com or through our Twitter or social media type activities. And I'd encourage you to give us that feedback because it helps us tune the agenda to meet people's requirements. So as a sort of closing slide coming up, if you've got people that you think could attend some of these future sessions, please feel free to send the invite onto them. If you're not registered yourself already, and I know there's a number of you who've already registered for the full series, next one's going to be 3 steps to developing your cloud strategy. Then we're going to run a session on hybrid coexistence of on-prem and cloud functionality. Then understanding your finance reporting options in the cloud. And finally, what does business as usual look like, cloud after go live? There's been a number of questions coming through, but we're slightly running over. So what we'll do is we'll answer the questions that have come through in the sharing we do of the content or the video that we've taken. Please also, if you want to watch what's going on in the marketplace, follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. We're always posting about new innovation in the marketplace around cloud. Alternatively, if you're interested in anything specific, email us and we'll see what we can do to help. In the meantime, can I thank everybody for joining? Hopefully it's been a really useful and informative session. Vicky, many thanks for your time and presentation, and I look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Cheers then. Bye-bye.